Hi, welcome to the show. Michael and Janelle Houston have had quite a time over these last 14 years dealing with Michael's acquired disability. Michael has a cognitive impairment that affects him entirely. So, Michael, tell me how this has been for you.
It's a physical and cognitive movement disorder similar to Parkinson's and cognitively similar to a severe stroke or brain injury where you lose basic functions of ADLs, basic understanding of things like showering, feeding. The first year, my wife had to pretty much do everything for me. At the time, she wasn't my wife. She became my carer, then wife after the fact. So the injury actually also was a blessing where it brought us together. If I have different, I think there's different things like if I go underwater, I have no control over breathing. So I would could suck up. At the start, I had no control over my lungs. So mine was physical. So it meant that I had no like Parkinson's in reverse, where I had no control over movements. So no ability to speak, no ability to swallow food, no ability over lungs. So I would spend months where my lungs would shut down, and you kind of we can choose to hold our breath, whereas my body would just do that and just hold its
Mm.
breath. And then you'd be like, the first time it happened, I thought I'm dying, and then we just got used to it. So yeah, the involuntary stuff, I still notice I do have movements and things, but your body gets good at masking it over the years. Cognitively, I'm probably 75% of who I am. And emotions, depending on circumstances. A
Yeah.
bizarre one, if I go on anything that puts my equilibrium out, like a roller coaster or something, I go back to pretty much what I was at the start. My brain uh, doesn't, whatever it does to my equilibrium. If I'm on a boat and it's
Right.
rocking, then my movements will become extreme and my body starts seizing up. So the brain is it's like the final frontier. It's an area that there's many unique cases like mine that aren't your typical brain injury where sorry, there you go, where mine does go into the physical movements of how, imagine mixing your emotions and your physical body and your cognitive functioning all in a pot. So it meant that, even in the first 5 years, if someone was talking to me, my arm might kind of mimic my ear and be like an ear, or my voice might. So there was a lot of rhythm and movements that a lot of seizing. I still have a lot of, yeah, I still have times where my muscles will seize up. I swim a lot. I'm very fit. It was like a marathon runner where mine also allowed me to be extremely fit. The first 7 to 10 years, it was like a marathon where I just had a six pack, and it was a blessing physically, but also now I'm getting the effects where I have like crushed vertebrae and broken down muscles, broken down joints, like a professional athlete, where my body's very worn out. So I have very high pain. I've had high pain thresholds for the last 14 years, and I just learned to deal with it. Jaw would be one, like chewing gum when it hurts, when you chew gum and then you spit it out. For me, it's like it was permanent. So you just have to go through the day with an agonizing pain throughout all of your body. If you talk to someone with Parkinson's or even cerebral palsy that have physical movements or ailments or muscle dystrophy, then all that they will sympathize with what I'm saying with the physical side. It becomes very exhausting when it's both the physical and then you also have cognitive impairment on top of that, where you're at a stage where you do not understand what money is, you don't understand how to shower, feed yourself. When you add that together, then it was very extreme on both physical and cognitive for an extended period of time.
So, Michael, making the film Roads of Life, what was your motivation?
I was an accidental filmmaker. So the entire process was me coming out of a state like a coma, literally, where you have no comprehension of your surroundings. Within the first 12 months, we became homeless as a direct result of my now partner's ex-partner being aggressive. We had an unplanned pregnancy. So during all of that, I came to a place somewhere in the second year At that stage, I was at least, I was far more aware than the first 2 months that I had no memory of. So through that process, it was very natural and organic. It was also prior to smartphones really taking over. So when I first had the injury 14, almost 14 years ago now, 2012. So, and at the beginning, right at the beginning, in January, end of January. So for me, at that stage, I had also already chosen not to have a smartphone. I'd chosen not to really participate. Facebook was the main big one still. Now that's for oldies and for businesses. It's still a staple. So the reality is that what really occurred was as I came out of something, I I was given a handheld camera that was worth nothing. I had always been creative. I had a recording studio with sound prior with hundreds of songs I'd recorded. And I guess I was unable to write music, unable to play guitar, unable to write by hand. Working through, I was always philosophical. I was always someone that analyzed life prior. I was an artist at heart. So for me, I look back now, can see that I took that trauma, I took that suffering, no different to when I had a guitar, and I just obviously transitioned it into this crappy camera, placed it on the beach or with interviews, and the first few months of having the camera from my son, I was erasing the footage, and I couldn't understand why I was erasing footage of my newborn son and me. And that was the beginning of my self-awareness to realize that there was something physically and cognitively presenting different in the footage to who I knew myself to be. So that was the beginning of me analyzing who is this third person that's not me, which they talk within disabilities of loss of identity and having to regain that. If you're in a wheelchair, it's very easy. Sorry, I shouldn't say easy, but if you have a very blatant disability from the start, or that occurs later on in life, at least there's a black and white line, and that person is told and notified. For me, it fluctuated like Parkinson's. So some days were worse than others. And so it becomes very difficult to identify who am I, who is my body, and how do I interact with my surroundings. Today, I can't talk. Tomorrow, I can. So for me, it's not about a modern day system where lots of people are monetizing their suffering or monetizing their success. It's not about being part of the media. It's not about being the next big thing. It was a natural progression that I chose to do on film that snowballed. And then at some point, it became aware to me that it was some kind of larger film and that I was looking at a far bigger problem, far beyond disabilities or my own story, and was very much about the human condition, the suffering we experience, the journey we go through, and the lens that we see that through in a modern era that is very over dependent on technology and very overwhelmed in information overload.
Mhm.
So for me, the question isn't so much how did I come about the film or what was my reasoning for making it. For me, it's a real blessing to know it was an organic process without agenda. And after that, after dropping some stuff on YouTube only 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, there was just one video of my leg spasming, and it's a really crappy video. There's nothing to it. And just through that spasming of a leg, it was different. Your leg doesn't normally do that. And I guess for me, that was the beginning where I've always had a heart for society and just said, you know what, like this is an open door. I need to utilize this. I need to explore what I've learned, what I've shared, and open that to a larger world for the benefit of others. And there's really no other agenda to it other than that. There's a lot of people these days monetizing and jumping on the bandwagon. It's easy to do what I did, but all my footage is old school. It's all 10 years old. It's when people were still not clever enough to work their own persona out on a smartphone. So the interviews are very organic and real.
Watching the film, Michael, is quite confronting. Can you tell me why you decided to use a star?
I think there's a difference between a filmmaker and an artist, and I've never really known how to box myself in. Similar to you, I'm not willing to put a box. I have to keep moving and painting, and you know, I, in another year, I may not make another film, and God knows what I'll be doing. I might be writing a book, or I might go into more social ground level of. So for me, even the film alone, it's more like it's a vessel, it's a door to then open discussion. I would want to see it not just used at film festivals or for shock value as a feature film. I would love to see it open those doors to those uncomfortabilities, that open those traumas, that open those discussions that we paint over,
Right.
that allow people to then be honest. I would love them to see the people I interviewed and how I express myself and that bombardingness, to then open them up and go, well, who do I love in my life? What am I? I want it to open that door into their own life. I want it to also expose and shock people to then that may be ignorant to that. I think people, I noticed halfway through the editing session, this sounds funny now, but it's probably not at the time. The first version was 10 hours, for example. And that for me was normal. I would watch it for 10 hours and I didn't know it took me all day. And I remember the first time getting my wife or someone else to watch it, and having insight to realize they couldn't watch it, and I didn't understand why. And for me, it was a blink of an eyelid, because I used to sit on the beach and stare at the light reflections for hours, and that would keep me occupied like a baby, literally. So I think there was also the exploration of passive aggressive frustration towards, why am I different, and why are these people viewing this differently? Why can I sit here for 10 hours, and why do they want something faster? And the more I came out of the editing process, I saw a world that had transitioned very quickly throughout my decade of disability, that there was a lot of damaging stuff out there already, that there was a lot of shock value, that there's a lot of stuff that just exploits. And I guess for me as an artist, I have seen other artists in history that use exploitation, um, in a really clever way to then mirror back what society is okay with. And
Mm.
I like the idea of confronting art that allows or confronts a society to go, well, you like it over here, you like it over there, let's do it with disabilities. Oh no, that's offensive, you can't do it with this. These are the topics you can confront, these are the topics you can exploit, these are the ones you can make all nasty and messy, but it has to be done in Hollywood, and it has to be done this way, and it has to be done by certain marketing campaigns. Whereas I guess the more I've drawn, it gave me the confidence to realize that the more I release stuff, the more it was connecting with the audience, and that there's a lot of people out there that feel that same disconnection from others. They feel the same bombardment from online media. And I guess mine's kind of in there. It looks the same. It has the same 10-second Tom, hey, if it's more than 10 seconds, we're going to flick over. Well, it's like, okay, well, if you want to be shocked, if you want something for 10 seconds, it's going to grab you, here we go.
How do you think acquiring a disability differs from being born with one?
What comes to mind is the family, and their son had cerebral palsy. And I had to edit them. These people that is seen as shock value, I'm the one that had to edit that. So for you, imagining what you went through watching it, imagine what I went through on a philosophical and emotional level, just trying to actually, fathom the editing process. And it was suffering beyond suffering for me. And it allowed me to dive in and really feel like that bro. I love him, man. At the time he was 21, and his mum's, in her mid 40s, suplexing him through the water. There's no OH&S safety there. They're not dragging out the machines. It's just, we're on holidays and my son wants to be in the water, and he's going to get in the water. So for me, you know, talking to him and people like that have been like that for life, and then I can actually say that I've experienced the same levels and extremities that he did for an extensive period of time. So I guess I was caught in two worlds where I got to experience it. But again, you're 100% correct. When your identity, it's a very philosophical question because your identity is mixed into your physical realm, and so therefore those that are born like that, that is their identity. It may be different, but the word disability is a modern day term. If you look at history of disabilities over thousands of years, it wasn't so much disabilities, it was just you were either a participant of society or you weren't.
Mhm.
So the lepers and the the the, the people that we would now call with disabilities were just thrown to the dogs. They were the same as the dogs on the side of the street. There's still, I think the other difference that we forget in privilege culture is having a holistic worldview where there's a lot of countries for a very long time that haven't had the same privileges within disabilities that we have. And I think asking those people in third world countries the difference between someone that acquires an injury and someone that has lived and born with it,
Mhm.
they're the ones that are actually feeling it on ground level. And it's hard to put into words how you would differentiate that. There's some people in some cultures that will actually make themselves disabled to be able to actually gain monetary finance.
Mhm.
So that puts another whole level of, it's one thing for you or I to go through a traumatic event that we didn't ask for. It's another thing to know we're living in a day and age where some are actually choosing to make themselves disabled in order to put food in their belly. And so for me, I enjoy answering that question, but I wouldn't even be able to begin to know how many layers there are to that. But I know that for me personally, acquiring it is a very, very surreal experience because you get to pretty much not turn into another person, but you have to start philosophically looking at the difference between this is one person and this is another, and where do they meet, and what parts inside are the same, what are different.
This movie has had 1 million views on YouTube. What did you want to achieve by releasing it?
Would like it to open doors. I think we're living in a day and age where achievement and our own self has become too great. The one thing I learned through the filmmaking process and the grief and trauma, not only of the last 14 years, but my previous life was pretty shocking. My life story that's dived into the second half of the film is pretty full on. I've experienced a lot of walks. It allows me to speak with you in depth about disabilities, but it will also allow me to walk into a lot of other subcultures in the next 12 months that the film tackles. So for me, I think the main achievement would be in a modern day age where our devices tell us that our world evolves around us. I would want it to allow us to look at each other, to actually genuinely let go of our own identities that I think have become far too overweighed on a community basis. There's a lot of people out there that don't really ask for much and don't really need much connection. And then there's other people that are getting a large amount of connection, and then it just feels imbalanced. So any form of genuine connection that the film builds, any form of genuine conversation, then my goal is achieved. And I guess the larger it gets and the bigger it gets at film festivals next year and screening, the more impact that can make into shocking people into open discussions and change. I want people to walk away shocked from the 93-minute version. The people we've tested it out on, most of them can't even look at me. They cry and they have to leave and they won't speak for at least a week before they can then even dissect whatever the hell I've put together. So if it can do that, then it's allowing people to experience what you and me went through and many other subcultures without having to actually go through it. And if I can do that on film, that's a blessing for a large percentage of the population that can learn from people like you and me.
Oh, thanks, Michael, for telling us your story.